I had to get my own stuff and I had to get it quick. So I wound up 16 years old getting my dad to buy me a Tokyo Marui M3 Super 90 long version.
Well, welcome, man. Welcome back, I should say. We attempted this last week and had some. My internet was out. Actually, it was up. It was out for about 30 minutes after it knocked us out, and so whatever. We rescheduled for this week, and we're good to go. So shout out to sponsors, Skirmish. Go to skirmish.net to check their stuff out. You guys have heard me talk about this thing for over a year now. It is the stat tracker for your airsoft play. It's like playing Call of Duty. Everyone says they want to play Call of Duty, or they want to play Call of Duty in real life. That's why they get into airsoft, and then they go out there and play, and they don't know how their individual, how they did. And at Call of Duty or Halo, at the end of your match, you get to see all your stats, which everyone loves to see. But in Airsoft, you can't do that unless you're playing with Skirmish. Go to skirmish.net, check it out, and hit up your field owner if you guys don't have it there, and ask them if they could get it at their field or big event. They really do well at big LARP events as well. Balahack just did one. They had 500 people using Skirmish bracelets on there, so it was really cool. Jackal Tactical is the other sponsor. Shout out to them. They're up in PA. 2 stores, a field, and they run Otherworld MilSim, where they host events. Which one of them was just a few days ago, this past weekend. The day before, it was a Saturday before St. Patty's Day, and then they have another event coming up in September that is in South Carolina, actually, down by me. So it's only like 2 hours away from me. So I'm definitely going to check that one out. Go to jacktac.com to check out their info, and you can buy stuff on their store and also buy tickets for their events. So I appreciate the sponsors, and big shout out to them. So, and then I've got my guest tonight is Keystone Carcajou. Okay. We started talking last week a little bit, and you are in. Are you in PA as well? Yeah, you're in PA.
Yes. And then, as a matter of fact, Jackal Tactical is the place I go to get all my little stuff and tech work and stuff like that.
Exactly. So you joined me last week for the first time, and we got interrupted by tech stuff, and then we're back at it tonight. So we'll start from the beginning so everybody can hear your story and that kind of stuff. So welcome, man. Appreciate you being on.
Hey, not a problem, man.
Oh, yeah. Why don't you give a brief history of how you grew up and your background, and then you and I talked last week. You went in the military. You're a jarhead like myself, and
Yep.
And then what got you into airsoft? We'll go into that.
Well, what got me into airsoft? Well, I started off as probably most of the, mid. Oh, I was a paintballer in the mid to late '90s, and I used to play a lot of the scenario games. I used to play a lot of Woods Ball. And when that started being the not de rigueur and the more toxic end of the speedball community started gaining more precedence, a lot of us were kind of pushed out. And one guy who was kind of keeping quiet, he kind of turned me on to it. And I started looking, and I'm like, okay. I made my connections. Back then, the big information hub for Airsoft was a place called Airsoft Zone. and it was an information site. You know, they had a couple of like little media things, couple of music videos. One was to Blind by Corn, and then the other one was to the game by Motorhead.
Oh, that's
So
wild. So this
yeah,
was a website for Airsoft back in the day. It was Airsoft
yeah,
Zone. Okay,
yeah. Airsoftzone.com, I think
and
it
they had
was.
music videos on their site. That's
Yeah, they had
fun.
a couple. I mean, it wasn't as big as it is now because, you know, now you've got a laptop and you've got video editing software. You know, this was just people taking cameras out, and you know, it was real primitive
Uh huh.
by today's standards. But it, you know, you have to remember 95 to 99, this was pretty revolutionary.
Right.
You know, we're all you know, we're getting a little used to things now.
Right. For sure. Yeah, especially you can edit all. You know, I know people edit all their stuff on their phones now.
Oh,
I've tried. I've tried editing longer videos on my phone, and I'm not used to it yet.
it don't work. It don't work.
I'm not used to it. I'm not as nimble with my fingers, I guess. You know.
Yeah, that is a thing. Or it's just the interface is different.
Yeah.
You know what somebody like you or I might be used to.
Yeah, I'm used to the mouse, keyboard. I've been using the software that I use now for 6 years, I think. And you know, for editing, it was cheap. It was like $40 when I bought it. That's why I got it. So I tried the Adobe. What is that? The Premiere Pro thing, whatever their editing thing is. And so I put it on my computer. I could barely run it. It had so many tools. It was just it would lag way too much. So I needed like a dumbed down version, right? You know, like video editing for dummies. Where's that software? And that's kind of what I got back, 6 years ago. So I'm so
Yeah,
used to it now, and I don't want to spend. It works. It does what I want. So
yeah,
I'm not going to buy any more.
yeah, and yeah. You get used to something. You can make a good presentation even if the software's not as great as some people say.
Right.
Uh, Same goes for airsoft. I mean, you know, it's an any given Sunday situation. You know,
Hmm.
the kid who just showed up with, you know, his brother's borrowed SEMA can nail somebody who's got a $1,200 HPA system.
Yeah. Yep. I remember when we first started our channel, we were talking about this stuff. I didn't know. I was new to airsoft and the whole thing. So these guys were telling me, "Oh, man, you got to upgrade your gun. You have to do this." I'm like, I mean, you don't really have to. Okay, like, I mean, if somebody came out of, if somebody's very athletic and has some, let's say they're a veteran, and they just come out of the military or something, and they're used to running and gunning or whatever tactics and stuff, and they're used to handling the weapons and all that kind of stuff. What I mean, you stick one of these cheap guns in their hand and let them run around. They're probably going to have fun with it, like as long as it doesn't break while they're using it. But the
Yeah.
basics, it's you don't have to have a $1,200 gun, to have fun.
Oh yeah. Yeah. That's one of the ones. Oh God, when I was playing down in North Carolina around about 08, 09 time frame,
Yeah,
we did a player improvement day where we took, you know, there were a number of us that volunteered um, to you know, teach various things, and mine was urban combat and light machine support guns.
gotcha.
Because at the time I was running support guns real heavy,
Mm-hmm.
and one of the first things we did was we took a number of targets and we ran it out and we said, okay, here's where your effective range is. That way you know what you're looking at. And that way, it really reduced the amount, at least for a year, of these situations. I know you and I have seen them where somebody's going, I hit you, I hit you, I hit you. And you're looking at them going, we've seen the meme. I've hit you. Call your hits. Call your
Yeah.
hits. And the other guy's like, my brother in Christ, you're playing with a toy gun. Your BBs are falling in front of me.
Like I could see them 10 feet up there. Okay, they're hitting the leaves up there. Yeah.
But yeah, that simple thing, and I've kind of refined it. Like I like to run anytime I've got a new anything, or anybody's got a new anything. I like to run them through it. It's really simple, and you could run it at an airsoft field if you had to, if that's the only place you got to shoot.
Yeah.
And it's real simple. It's a 2-foot by 2-foot piece of plywood. One of the targets is a larger ammo can, like one of the.
Yeah.
You might be familiar with them, the ones that you get the 5.56 ammo in when you went to the rifle range. You saw a big can, bandoliers come out.
Yep. The green ones.
And then, and then the third one is a plastic 55-gallon drum. The classic 55-gallon drum.
Oh, yeah.
Because what you do is you run it out there about 120 feet. So 40 yards, 40 meters. You let them take shots on. Around here, we use a lot of semi-auto.
Yeah.
At field, so you take, you can run a 5-shot string or you can run a 10-shot. 3 of 5 or 6 of 10.
Mm-hmm.
You can hit that target at that range if you're doing your part. Then you run it back, and you run it back until they can't get 3 of 5 or 6 of 10 on any of them. So now because you think about it, 50 cal ammo can's about the size of somebody's head wearing a helmet.
Yep.
You tilt it on its end. The 2-foot by 2-foot is somebody head and shoulders out of cover. Somebody just peeking up over the top, like you really aren't supposed to, but we all do it anyway. And then you've got the 55-gallon drum, which is a little shorter than somebody kneeling out in the open.
Yeah.
But if you can hit something shorter than that, you can hit something taller too.
Mm-hmm. Exactly.
But that's one of the drills I like to run with people when they ask me how to improve, or I like to give them when they say how to improve.
Right. Yeah, that's a good.
Yeah.
That's a good test.
And you get used to that. Now the other thing you have to remember, I'm drawing on my years of shooting and coaching ranges. If you're uphill or downhill, that impact's going to be a little higher.
Yeah. Yep.
You've seen it. You're defending a hill, you go to shoot at somebody who you normally would hit, and surprise, you're going over their head. You have to quick adjust down.
Yeah.
I've had it happen. Everybody's had it happen. I'm like, damn it, slope.
Yeah.
The slope.
Right.
Now, how did you snipers have a formulation to account for that, but you're not doing that in the middle of an airsoft game. Let's be real.
No. They're not. I mean, those BBs aren't going to travel that far anyway to adjust for that kind of stuff.
Nah, that's just Kentucky windaging it.
Exactly. Yeah, one of the guys I talked with, he doesn't even use sights. He takes all the sights off his guns. He just runs a straight, straight rail on the top, and the way he aims, he's like, it's right down the rail. He just looks down the barrel.
Oh yeah, I mean most of the time that's kind of how I shoot. I shoot kind of paintball style with that, but sometimes I've got a long shot, or I'm not sure if I'm hitting the guy. For example, I'm switching primaries this year, but my M27 had a 1-4 on it. And when I had those long shots, or I wasn't sure if I was even getting close,
yeah,
that's when I'd go to the optic.
Yep.
but most of your airsoft ranges, there's a field down here, Outdoor Extreme Lingelstown.
Okay.
They have this field that they love to play on. It's almost like it's an old speedball course, but it's all with these shipping containers that are shaped kind of like Legos. So we call it the Lego field.
Yeah.
That one I don't even use I don't use my optic on, but you know that one is also so short. It's not speed QB short, but it's still short for what I'm used to.
Yeah.
That I really don't even use my sights for that one because it's open and I can usually see pretty well what's going on.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. When you so what was your first game like when you first started? What was were you a rental? Or did you start out with a cheap gun? And did you start with a Springer?
This is a good one. My first game was a large game because we didn't have the MilSim as you know it now.
Mm-hmm.
In August of 1999 when I started. Um, it was a large game at Mill Hall, Pennsylvania, at a place called Extreme Adventure Games. I don't even think it's in business anymore. But I did not have a rental. I had to get my own stuff, and I had to get it quick. So I wound up 16 years old, getting my dad to buy me well, I footed the bill. He just placed the order for a Tokyo Marui M3 Super 90 long version.
Whoa.
Yeah,
That's cool.
I was gonna get the Spas 12 with the Shepherd's Crook, but they ran out of stock.
That's wild. Okay. So your first game, you played with a pretty decent weapon then.
It was decent. I mean, the thing to remember about that particular shotgun was I was expecting a shotgun like a shotgun, like I grew up shooting the 12 gauge.
Yeah.
And what wound up happening was I had to start thinking of it more like a sniper rifle that just fired 3 BBs per trigger pull.
Yeah.
Something shorter range. So I was doing I was doing okay. I mean, I was still getting shot out a lot because, well, I'm 16 years old, but I was a deer hunter and I spent most of my life in those kind of woods. So
Mm-hmm.
I wasn't completely dumb, but there was a lot of situations where the firepower was needed.
Right.
And somebody's finally like, "Hey, is that what you're playing with?" And they're like, I'm like, "Yeah, it's what I have." And he goes, Somebody hands me a Tokyo Marui Thompson, bone stock, 285 with twos, and says, "Try this." And I'm like, "Okay." I just ran with that most of the time.
Nice.
That was actually my first. Well, and then later I picked up a M1A1 as my first AEG, and that was wonderful.
Yeah, those are cool.
Yeah, until I broke the front end.
Oh, you fell.
Everybody knew that if you look at the Marui M1A1, the Thompson,
Yeah.
there are 2 screws on the bottom of it that like to back out. Nobody told me about the grub screw on the top, so there was this torquing that went on until the pot metal finally broke.
Mm.
Right at that tab, I'm like, God damn it.
Yeah, right.
I was mad.
I'm sure.
But kept at it. My first gas pistols were a Western Arms Standard Striker, 1911, which was one of the beginning of the railed 1911s. This one just basically looked like somebody had taken a chunk of rail and screwed it in.
Mm-hmm.
And I found that was dragging on the slide and was causing problems with its cycling, so I removed it.
Now
And
you
it
started.
worked wonderful.
You started when you were 16. Did you? So how soon? So then, of course, you grow up. You go in the military, and then Did you get right back into it after the military, or were you just kind of out of it for a while? And like, how did you start back into it?
Well, I was out of it for a while until I got to my first unit, and there was. Were you at Lejeune at all?
Just Camp Geiger for
Okay.
MCT. Yeah,
And so you were assigned what, West Coast or Okie?
Okie. Yep, Okie
Okay.
first, and then West Coast. Yep.
Okay. Okay. Yeah, at Lejeune there was a paintball field on base. I tried that again, and it was a little inflatable speedball field, and I was like, eh. And I started looking around, and there is or at least there was. I'm not sure if anybody can confirm the place is still there, but it was a little hobby shop right there in the little strip mall on Western. And I went in there, and the guy had airsoft guns on the back on the wall. And I looked at it and was like, "Holy crap!" He's got and one of them was a top M60 Vietnam.
Oh wow.
And I wound up picking that up. I wound up because I had a savings account that I put aside. I basically took $20 out of every paycheck and threw it in there. And if you've been ignoring it for over a year, that money adds up.
Sure.
So I took some from it and picked up some guns. And I had a friend who was married and agreed to hold on to them for me because I was still living in the barracks. And while we would consider that cool, I'm pretty sure the officer of the day would have a collective
No.
connection fit
Exactly.
at you know a young PFC or Lance Corporal with an something that looks like an M60 machine gun and an M14 in his
Uh
wall
huh.
locker.
Especially if these guys take the tips off and put like a mock suppressor or whatever,
Oh yeah, I
make it look
mean
badass.
I've got a few like that, but some of them I don't. Hold on.
Oh, nice.
That's the Tanaka that I was talking about. The Colt
What?
Police Positive.
That
As you
is
can
cool.
see, my friend in the barracks covered the orange with sight black.
Uh huh.
But yeah, that gun is I mean I remember mentioning it. And you're looking it up and going, "Holy crap, that's old."
Yep. Oh yeah, that's funny, man. So you
Which
play?
is
Okay,
weird.
you were able to play while you were in too. That's cool.
Yeah, I found a field, the Sportsman's Lodge, up off of what was it, 17 or 24, something like that.
Okay.
And then it moved to a couple of other places, and I just kept with it and got involved with the local. At that time, a lot of things were done through local state organizations.
Mm-hmm.
People banded together, and at that time it was the NCAO, and I played for them. I played with them a lot. They were pretty reasonable people,
Hmm.
and they were very safety minded, which was always a plus in those days.
Sure.
Because yeah, now we're getting into like 2007, 2008, 2009,
Gotcha.
2010 when I left the service.
And when was your first
Uh,
big event, like MilSim type?
oh well, okay. If you're talking about MilSim type, that would have been 2010. That would have been Irene 8. And yeah, that one I remember fondly because we pulled what we called the Zussman machine gun massacre.
Whoa, what was that? Yeah, go through that
Okay,
story.
well, that's kind of a funny story. Now, NCAO used to put up a platoon of guys. They always ran Task Force Ranger. And I'm like, you know what? I may be leaving, but I want to do this at least once before you know everything goes on. And I wound up going as the backup support gunner and general plug and play. What my friend calls a plug and play. You need me to fill in at a position, I can do it. I'm just not the greatest distance runner, so don't put me up front with all the speedy kids.
Right. Yeah.
I had what we used to call the old bull tendency early, and I guess some of that comes from stalking through heavy brush, hunting deer. But the Zussman machine gun massacre, we had the morning game. We broke for lunch. They told me I was going to need to swap up my 60 because our primary support gunner's gun broke. It ate a piston, and they weren't going to be able to get to it. So it was, get the 60. Okay. Got the 60 up. And one of the other squads in our platoon was from, I want to say, Tennessee. And they had a guy who twisted his ankle up pretty good and was a little gimped up. And we had a young 18-year-old with us. He had just turned 18. Actually, he turned 18 at the event, and I actually had to get all kinds of special clearances for him, but not getting into that. But so we traded the young runner, the young Lochinvar, for term my dad uses. God, I'm starting to sound like my dad. But we traded the young kid for this gimped up machine gunner. And if you watch Zussman, you watch the videos of Zussman, there's this big balcony over top of the building that they call the embassy, where it's fenced in. You have a round driveway with gates, and it's all walled in. But you have this balcony out there, and if you ever watch some of the old Irene footage, you see people go out there and they just get shot. That balcony's a death trap. But it's these big windows, these tall, big windows that lead out onto it, and a doorway that leads out onto it. So this guy and I are sitting here fortifying ourselves in because our mission is to defend this building. And we wound up doing it, but the first part, we had two guys, we basically divided the buildings that we saw into sectors, and we were watching the guys moving around in the windows. And we're sitting here planning, okay, I'm going to take the roof, and we're going to go cyclic for a minute. If you need to reload, let me know. I'll pick up the slack. Here's your sector of fire. Here's my sector of fire. And then we're going to go down to rapid, and then for another 2 minutes, and then we're going to go sustained. And we're planning it out. Game on, and it just goes. And within the first 2 minutes, you couldn't see any movement in them windows anymore.
Mm-hmm.
In this one building off half, my half left, you couldn't see any more movement in those windows. It was nothing but dead rags up on the roof. It was a massacre. And later, my buddy, who is the platoon sergeant, goes, I go, how did y'all like that? He looks at me and goes, Max heard the gunfire, goes, what's going on up there? He goes, yeah, we traded with another squad. We got 2 machine guns up there. And he's going, he just starts chuckling. And McKnight's kind of sitting there smiling, and according to him, John Liu told him, don't do that again. Apparently it caused considerable carnage because, like I said, after that phase was over, John Liu basically told him, don't trade that off again.
Oh my gosh. Yeah, I imagine.
You've done something right when the game organizer looks at you and says, please don't do that again.
Well, I see how these videos, how Airsoft Alphonse takes out whole squads with, when he's up in the helicopter with that machine gun. And so I can't imagine 2 being on the roof. Just, yeah.
Well, it wasn't on a roof. It was on a second floor.
Yeah.
So for the one, I'm firing upwards at a slope.
Mm-hmm. Oh, okay. To the guys at the roof, yeah.
Yeah, and then I just started cleaning down the floors.
Nice.
I just started going roof, 3rd floor, 2nd floor, 1st floor. And they couldn't get anybody in that way. They managed to get a squad in, but they never managed to take the building. And that was one of those games. I had, I think, 4 guns on me. I had the 60. I had SOCOM Gear Punisher 1911 with two extra mags.
Nice.
I had a SIG 226 by KWA, which unfortunately decided to basically work until it didn't work no more.
Well, that's what they do.
Yeah, and then I had a little Army Armament Detonics, which wound up being one of the ones with surprising range, and I used to call that the dirty trick in the vest pocket because people never saw that gun.
Really?
So yeah, because
was it a pistol?
Yeah, it was a pistol. It was a little tiny, like, Glock 26 size.
What? I thought, I could have swore, isn't the AAP-01, isn't that Army Armament?
Yep.
And I thought somebody, maybe I misheard him. Well, it might have been one of my sons. I don't know, when that thing first came out, I thought it was their first pistol that they made.
No.
Okay.
They made this Detonics long while before, and I picked it up. It was a cheap little $100. I think I paid like $1.25 for it.
Yeah.
And I only needed the 1 mag because it had one purpose. It was my last ditch.
Right.
It was, the only thing I can think of going back to old Scottish Highland warfare, the Skiandu. The little knife that they use, that you see if you ever go to like the Ren fairs or the Highland Games, where the guy has the little dagger stuck in his sock.
Yeah, like the boot knives and yep.
That's what it was for. But because
I used to have
small,
I used to have a Kershaw dagger boot knife. The thing was badass. Yeah.
Oh yeah, Kershaw makes some great working knives. But this pistol, man, it was single stack. It was a 1911 style platform, so I knew it well. And all I did was I loaded it up, gassed it up, stuck it in the map pocket on the front of my plate carrier, and just stayed there. So, it was one of the ones you could look at me, you could see I had a 1911 on my chest. I had a 226 in a thigh holster, but you never saw the Detonics. And I remember one of the guys sitting there going, I think the 60 gunners run his pistols dry. And he pops his head up over, and I can hear him going, "Nope, he didn't. He's got another gun." And they're like, "Damn it!"
So you had 3 pistols on you?
Yep.
Whoa.
Well, the SIG at the time, it was one of the PTP series.
Yeah.
And those were hard to get magazines for, so I always ran it just 1 mag.
Right.
And then the 1911 was my primary. That's the one I used all the time. Yeah, I think I still have it. My SOCOM Gear Punisher.
Dude, that's awesome.
Yep. Modeled after the 2004 Punisher.
Uh-huh.
Which was actually one of my favorite movies at the time.
Yeah, right. Oh, that's cool. Okay. So, yeah, I was going to ask you, Irene, that's Op Lion Claws. Yeah, that's a Lion Claws event.
Yep. And in those days, you were pretty much either Lion Claws or you had Black Sheep. There was a guy named Black Sheep that put on events in around the same time Lion Claws was, but it was Black Sheep was a little different. Black Sheep, closest thing I can compare it to nowadays would be like American MilSim or MilSim West.
Gotcha.
Because you were sleeping out there, you were sleeping out in the
playable area.
You were sleeping out on the playable area. It was possible to get murked at night, that kind of thing. And I'm like, I was sitting there thinking about it, and I'm like, that seems a little unsafe.
You gotta sleep with all your gear on, man.
Well, yeah, but I'm sitting here thinking, everybody, good example would have been years ago. I took a the reason I thought of it was years ago I took a car trip with my grandparents from Pennsylvania to Alaska.
Whoa.
Yeah, and it was a lot of fun. But I'm sitting one night watching my grandfather, and he's tossing and turning, and I'm sitting there thinking about Black Sheep, and this image popped into my head of my grandfather trying to sleep in. Now, I mean, we didn't have the face protection. We still had the eye protection.
Yeah.
The eye protection's always been a thing. But the face didn't come around until later because we play at some, compared to, you compare it to somewhere like England or Germany or Japan. Americans play at some real high velocity, but we also have a lot more spread out places to play.
Mm-hmm.
We're not playing kind of smashed into a specific area like some of the Japanese fields, from what I understand, are like.
Yeah.
Always wanted to go out there and see that, but
Oh,
we'll see if that ever happens.
do you follow Death Row?
Yeah, I followed Defro.
Yeah, he's in Japan. He does a lot of all his videos and stuff there. He's got indoor and outdoor stuff.
Yeah,
You can check out. He
But
does
I
a
was
pretty good
watching
job
it.
of showing them. Yeah.
Yeah, but it seems like a lot of the European and Japanese fields are a little smaller, if that makes sense.
Way smaller. Yep.
Because compared to anywhere here,
Mm-hmm.
You mentioned, for example, Otherworld doing an event up at EMR. I used to play paintball up there.
Yeah.
That field is not small. I mean, it's not huge, but it's also not small either. I mean, we're not God, when I went up there for Kessel Conquest, it sometimes was, we'd get hit and walking back, and it'd take us 15 minutes to work our way back up to where we were.
Yeah.
We're talking about walking down the hill, walking to the the respawn point, turning around, walking back up. Oh, I'm taking fire, so I need to actually start, using cover and dead space to my advantage.
Right.
It could be 15, 20 minutes before you worked your way back up to where you were, so you could actually start shooting again.
Uh-huh.
That was some. But yeah, it's not a small field, but it's not monstrously big. If that makes if that makes sense.
Well, now, what's the biggest event you've been to? Is that
Like I
the
said,
biggest? Was that the one?
Irene probably would have been the
okay.
biggest.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
And that was your first
other than that,
MilSim?
Yeah, it was my first MilSim. Now, the other ones that could qualify as my biggest events would have been CDWC in North Carolina. Used to put on. There were 3 I used to go out to Taylorsville for. And one was Vietnam Patrol. One was Fulda Gap.
Oh, yeah.
And then one was Santa versus Grinch. And I used to go out there for those. And sometimes I think one year we had 700 or 800 for Fulda. And I went out there for that one. But I mean, that's a big game with vehicles and everything else. So,
yeah, that is a big game.
While it's not a MilSim like we think, it's still pretty large.
Yeah, I mean, MilSim, the word MilSim. I remember when we first started our channel, I'm learning all this stuff about Airsoft, and my boys said, we're going to a MilSim, and I said, oh, what's that? And they were like, military simulation. And I said, what? Y'all ain't gonna make it, because they were like out of shape, and because they gained a bunch of weight after high school, because they both played football, and they were both linemen, so they kept eating like they were still in football, but not working out. You know what I'm saying? And I was like, bro, what? I mean, you're gonna have to run, right, with all your gear on and stuff. Like, you don't even have boots that are broken. What are you talking about? You're going to be hurting. And they're like, yeah, it's a 3-day MilSim. I'm like, you ain't going to last. I was joking around with them, but I was kind of serious because I didn't know I took the word literally. I thought it was literally a military simulation. So from start to finish, I thought when it said go, you're like being in the military for 2.5 days, you know. So they were like, no, there's a bunch of different types of MilSims, and that's when I started learning. So
Oh yeah.
I think the as far as the way the word or that terminology is meant to be, I think MilSim West has a lock on that, from what I understand. So they are the closest to an actual simulation type, right?
Yeah,
As
they go hard into the simulation end of
hmm
it.
yeah,
That's what I've seen. Uh,
and I know like
what
every airsoft
I've
event
seen.
is a technically a LARP, right? It's still a LARP event. I mean, you're still playing with toy guns. You're still pretending to
Yeah.
die. You're still pretending to, you know, I shot that dude. You know, it's pretend. Um,
Yeah.
but yeah, the military
I get it.
simulation thing was
I
funny.
get it. But the LARP label kind of makes me cringe because I was a LARPer for a good few years,
What'd you do?
and well, I did a mix of things. Some of them were more dramatic, some of them were more to parlor end, and then some of them were basically uh, um, Braveheart with a foam sword,
Yeah.
so to speak.
Now, what were the
So
other ones?
I've run the range on that end, and airsofters to me, having watched and having done things, they're a little different. While there's some similarities, and I won't contest that, there's also a lot of very different. For example, the LARPers I know, and mind you, like Airsoft, LARP can run by region, but um, LARPs can run by region. But I've been New York State, New Jersey, not Massachusetts, just south of us, Maryland, Delaware, Pennsylvania, down to Virginia, and they tend to be more worried about how things look from the outside looking in, whereas we're kind of like, this is how we are. We don't tend to care much as long as you don't like straight up label us a militia, and it's also tends to be, it also we also tend to be very, what are the words of the wise street poet who I often use this one with my daughter who started playing last year. Walk up in there and show them that you're equal. We aren't about tell us you're equal. We're about show us, and that showing us you're equal is literally just follow the ethics. We talk about 85% looking the part, 10%. Some people say it's like 90% looking the part and 10%. Uh,
Tactical.
yeah, 10% tactical. I'm like, it's more like 85-10-5. It's 85% looking the part. It's 10%, playing the athletic skill, military skill, all that, which is more or less the same thing if you think about it. Because how many sports, if you looked at every sport, even Olympic track and field, and you go back to when it started, all of them have some aspect of warfare in them. You think about it. But I'm getting a little off topic. And then 5% ethics, which is don't be an asshole. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
You don't want to be around. You don't want to play with the guy whose whole mentality is, I'm just going to mag dump this fool in his head.
Right.
Yeah, that's where I'm like, yeah, it's kind of 85-10-5
hmm
versus 90-10. But 90-10's a good one. I'm just kind of nitpicking with that one.
No, I think it. Yeah, I understand what you're saying, and because of all the look, you wouldn't have to say ethical if people would play right and had respect and good manners. So, but a lot of the younger generation coming into the sport, they don't. This is why I think it's important for one of the things that we've talked about with numerous people on here before is how do we fix that kind of behavior, right? And I had I had make them play paintball first. Okay, if you want to play, you got to start with paintball because that shit hurts way worse than airsoft.
Oh yes.
Yeah.
Oh yes.
And then 2, on indoor fields, you have to wear, if you're let's say 16 to let's say 15 to, I don't know what the youngest age is in there, but in indoor fields it might be 14 to 17, right, or 18. You got to wear no, you can't be wearing a bunch of gear. You have to wear a t-shirt. Okay, now you could wear your something like a chest rig or a plate carrier, but you have to some kind of skin has to be exposed, like your arms or something like that. I mean, that would fix a lot of things. Like one of the guys, matter of fact, Freddie from Veterans for Airsoft, he goes, people are complaining about overshooting. He's like, then die better. So if you call, instead of just raising your hand like, oh, hit, like if you are really role playing, right? Like you're, you fall down, you fall on the ground, you're like, oh, I'm hit, like medic or whatever. Then they're not going to overshoot you. But yeah, these young kids coming in, I think they need, they got to learn respect for the game, and that is, bro, the shit hurts sometimes, okay? And if you're wearing like this hoodie, the first time you go to play, you're barely going to feel it. Like you'll feel it, but you're barely going to feel it. And
Well,
yeah.
yeah. Well, first off, one of the things to accept, as part of the ethical end of it is we're all human.
Yeah.
It's like I tell people, for example, I took my daughter out for her first game in late June, early July of last year. And there were a couple things I did, but one of the things I did to everybody that was on my side of the field is I reminded them, drink water. It's hot. It's humid. Tempers are going to flare. If you start feeling yourself get that way, don't say anything. If you need to vent, you come vent to me. And they're like, how old, how long have you been playing? I looked at him and said, how old are you? And he goes, 20. And I go, I started playing 4 years before you were even born. And you look at people go, huh?
Yeah.
Now, it's kind of weird because I don't think of myself as, because I've had some people who are in the airsoft scene look at, find out how long I've been playing, and they say, oh, you're one of the OGs. And I'm like, I don't really think of myself as such, because I remember, and I'm still talk to some of the guys that were, the old hands when I started playing. And, these were guys who started playing with like JAC Bushmasters and Asahi guns, stuff you don't hear about anymore. And, the classics. And,
yeah, I've never heard of this.
Yeah. They were scuba tank guns. They were mechanical scuba tank guns.
Yeah.
Kind of like Daytona guns would be for us. But that's what you had to play with until Tokyo Marui invented the AEG with the FAMAS. But no, the part of it is maturity. I'm a Zennial, so I kind of am that weird cusp between the Gen X and the Millennial. If that makes sense. So some of my upbringing was kind of feral. I was one of those kids that, when summer was in, I got up, I ate breakfast, and then I was kicked out of the house until it was time for lunch. Came in, eat lunch, go out, and you better be home before you'd be home before 6.
Yeah.
It was 5 during the school year.
Yep.
But that kind of a thing. But when I was first playing, the old hands, it was kind of expected. You respected the old hands, unless they were complete and total assholes.
Right.
And being a complete and total asshole was things like cheating, lighting somebody up, what we would call mag dumping nowadays.
Sure.
That kind of a thing. Or going, use the search feature. If somebody's asking, they haven't found what they're looking for on the search feature. But it was also expected that when you had experience, you were to pass it on.
Sure.
So it was a little more. We were a little more anti-authority, but we were also a little more egalitarian, if that makes sense.
Well, it is weird to see when older players are losing their shit, like when they're getting, they're frustrated and they're yelling and they're like.
I had one incident like that I can remember, and it was this one kid. I call him a kid because by this point I'd already hit corporal. I had already had a combat tour with an infantry battalion under my belt. I was a truck driver, but I got augmented to an infantry battalion for a deployment to Iraq.
I was motor transport as well. Yep.
Yeah.
I signed up.
3531 and
yep, 3531.
I secondaried as a 34 and an 0933.
Yep, I was 35.
So I was a rifle and pistol coach, and I was semi-refueler, 931s, 970s.
Well, we did a lot of the same stuff because I went Okie. I was at 9th Motors Battalion, Delta Company, and then when I got stationed at Pendleton, I was at Edson Range, the shooting range out there, the small shooting range where the recruits from MCRD San Diego go up to qualify, and snap in and all that. So yeah, it's so I spent the last of my duty out there in Edson Range.
Yeah, but so I call him a kid, but this guy was in his 20s.
Okay.
He was probably a little bit younger than I was.
Mm-hmm.
And he had a reputation for being sneaky, but the thing was, I had been teaching people how to watch for somebody trying to sneak up on you.
Mm-hmm.
And to figure out, if I'm going to sneak, I said, you got to think about it. This guy is a bit of a showboat, so he's going to take the hard way all the time. So think about what the hardest way is and anticipate him going that way. If somebody wants to take the easy way, they're going to go downhill toward water, kind of a deal. Like a hit deer. A hit deer, when you going back to my hunting days, and you shoot a deer, if it's gonna run, it's gonna run downhill toward water. So if you know where the water features are and you know where they go downhill, you're gonna be able to figure out where they are and what direction they went. Just same with people. People are going to take the easiest route downhill, and they're instinctively going to go toward heavy brush or water because they're going to look for some way to hide. But this guy, he started shooting his mouth off about 2 weeks before on the NCAO forums. And he'd been talking about how LMG players don't deserve to play the open plays on the weekends, and it should be restricted to just people who are using pistols and rifles and this, that, and the other. And everybody kind of knew what was up. And people knew, yeah, you're just mad because he's calling you out. You're having to learn and you're having to progress rather than rely on raw talent. And what had happened was we were playing a game. It all kind of came to a head. We were playing a game. It was ridiculously hot and humid. I think it was like 85. I mean, I'm trying to remember 15 some years ago. So if my memory's hazy, forgive me. It was like 85 degrees out, and it was like 40-50% humidity. It was like stupid hot. Stupid hot, stupid sticky. Carolina weather. Yeah, you know that one.
I do.
But I'd gotten hit. And we had a field down there around Myrtle Beach called Adventure Beach Paintball. And everybody who went there usually wound up with one of their dead rags, which was bright blaze orange, which I liked. I still like the idea of a blaze orange dead rag rather than a red. Red's an easy to get color, but blaze orange is also good. You know, if red can be seen, blaze orange is better. But I have one of them on top of my head because it's sticky, and I'm sucking wind because I'm running a heavy M60. I have been running up and down a hill all day. It's 2 minutes till the end of the game. I just decided I'm going to stand there. So my Mark 43 is butt first on the ground. My hand is over the muzzle. I'm still on the field. I've got a dead rag on my head, and I'm calling hit every 30 seconds. And I'm calling hit not in a small voice. I'm doing as much of the command voice as I can muster, and so you know what that is.
Mm-hmm.
That really loud voice that doesn't seem to take much out of your throat because you're going from your stomach.
Yeah.
But for the viewers at home, so to speak. But this guy walks up and he's got a high kappa. This was right after the high kappa was released, and he's creeping up. And he's got the thing like this, 2 inches from my face.
What? No way.
Yup. And I'm literally looking him in the eyes, and I looked at him and I said, if you pull that trigger, I'm going to shove that gun up your ass. And he decides immediately to go running back to the dead zone where all the officials in the organization are, and go, he threatened me.
No way.
Yup. And at least 3 other people are like, dude, I saw what he did. I heard the whole thing. And they come running up, and he's telling everybody's like, what happened? And I said, I have no problem being overshot, unless somebody's like, pops up, sees me, and then just unloads.
Right.
But this guy did something that was really out of the pale. Now, was I out of pocket? Yes. And I'll be the first to admit it. But he was also really out of pocket, because at that point you're doing this to somebody 2 inches from their face.
No, that ain't no. I'm not dealing with
that. Like I said, I'm no.
Uh-uh.
And when that came out, that's when everybody kind of went. And his team captain was a 911 dispatcher.
Okay.
And was like, dude, you're not in trouble. He's looking at me going, no, dude, you're not in trouble. I'm like, I'm sorry if I brought trouble to your door. Because my mother, she is the typical, she was raised by my grandmother. My grandmother was a Quaker. So she was the type that would apologize if she thought she even inconvenienced you. And I picked up some of it.
Gotcha.
And I'm like, dude, I am sorry to bring that trouble to your door. He goes, no, I needed to know about this.
Yeah.
But, yeah, was I out of pocket? I'll admit it. Now, that, like I said, but also equally understandable, because I'm sitting here very clearly out, and this guy's just doing this, hoping to pull some shenanigans, get me kicked off the field, banned, so that way he can do whatever he wants to do.
No, that ain't cool, man.
That ain't cool.
Nope.
Yeah. Yeah. Nah. I mean, we don't care about external factors in airsoft.
Well, that's the thing. Like, some of these stories, I'm like, why do they do this kind of stuff? Like, what?
They
like,
do
even
it because they can get away with it.
Yeah, I guess, but damn, man, like, would you ever have done that? Even when you were 16, would you have done that on the field anyone ever?
If I had done that, I would have had. It would have been one of them cases of I'd have gotten my butt beat from one end of the field to the next, kicked off the field, and then when my dad found out about it,
exactly.
And my dad is a pretty calm person. I'd have caught a beating from him.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying, man. I think
a
lot of these are from bad parenting.
I'm a parent myself. I got 3 kids. 2 of them are on the spectrum, and for the most part, the kids on the spectrum are fine. My son's got an interest, but I'm not sure he's mature enough. And my daughter I offered it to her because I thought she was mature enough, but I did a test. And the test was very simple. I
Okay.
told her, I will back you 150% in this. I will buy whatever you need. It may not be top of the line, but you'll have stuff. But here's the thing. Pardon? Um, but here's the thing. The first thing you're getting will not be a gun. And I saw this with kids because one of my friends, Jack, used to run Big Boys Toys down in North Carolina. And, you know, I still kind of, if I'm in a place and the staff are busy, I kind of start asking questions. Kind of acting like ad hoc store person because, well, if they're busy, the minute they get unbusy, I can kind of speed them on their way, kind of a deal. Maybe steer the parents towards something. But I'd see these parents, their kids want to play, and their kids are trying to steer them toward the biggest, most expensive gun there is. And because they're kids, they're not thinking about eye protection. I was a paintballer, so I already had eye protection. The first year I wore a full JT Flex 7 plastic paintball mask. The next year I pulled the mask part off.
In
Once
paintball?
Again, we weren't. No, airsoft.
Oh, I was going to say, did you? I don't know anyone that.
I had the stuff already because I was a paintballer.
Right, exactly, yeah.
Oh,
well, I thought you meant you played paintball without a full face cover. I was like,
no,
bro, you're brave.
No. Now I did know some people who played that way because, well, they were old school paintballers. But
bro,
we'll not get into that mess.
That's rough.
But no, that's the test I did because whenever I'd bring up eye protection, you'd see these little kids who really weren't mature enough to handle it kind of get outraged because all of a sudden an adult is talking to an adult and is giving them the straight dope. So the kid would get a little mad because mom would say no to the nifty new whiz bang.
So what was your test now? Instead of buying a gun, you what was your test? I
told her.
Yeah.
Well, my test was I told her, I'll buy what you need. But the first thing you're getting is not a gun, it's a face mask.
Right.
So I'm watching for her reaction.
Oh, gotcha.
And now, like I said, will this work with all children? No. Nothing works for all children. I'm sure I can't use the same approach with my son that I can use with my youngest daughter, who I call the mischief that walks. She's very on the spectrum and very internally driven. I'm talking the first year we lived in this house that I'm in now, she raided it was the first winter we were in here. She raided the pantry, and I found her at 3 a.m. sitting on the floor of the pantry. She set up the step stool. She's got a can of hot cocoa mix in between her legs, a bag of mini marshmallows, and she's eating handfuls of mini marshmallows and spooning hot cocoa mix in her mouth.
I mean, that sounds yummy.
I look at her and go, Destiny, what are you doing? I want cocoa, Daddy. Look out the window. Is it still dark out? Yes, Daddy. It's not time for cocoa. It's time for night-night. Go sleep with Maddie. I'm going to go sleep on the couch. That little girl's the only one who kicks my butt out of my bed. Now, I can, Sean, or with the older two, I can usually be like, boy, are you supposed to do that? No. Are we goobering? Yeah. What are we supposed to be doing? Doing this. Go do it. Destiny, I kind of have to. I can only do so much with her because she is so far internally driven. So I kind of have to redirect her with other things.
Yeah.
But no. Like I said, I was watching Trinity. I was watching my middle child I call her the stoat. But I was watching my middle child for her reaction. If she got outraged, I'd go, I don't think you're ready for this. And I'd go on the shelf for another year or two. But her response was, Dad, that's a really strange order to do things in. May I ask why that is? I mean, she may not have said, "May I ask?" But she said, "Why is that?" She's curious.
Huh.
And I sat there and I told her straight up, because the first thing I've always had is I'm always honest with them as much as I can. I mean, I didn't tell them Santa Claus. I didn't tell them Santa Claus. And I didn't tell them birds and the bees at 6 years old. But Dad, why is this happening? This is happening because this is happening. I'm as honest with them as I can. And and I tell her, because I'm going to play honest with her. As you go through, if you stick with it, you'll trade guns, you'll get new uniforms, your gear will change, but you know what won't change? You have a set of eyes. You have two eyes. Those are the only ones you're going to have for the rest of your life. So that's the first thing I get you. And she's like, okay. And she thought about it for a minute, and she's like, yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah.
So dad's talking sense.
Yeah, that's the
And
thing, man. We got okay. So I have two hands. I have two sets of fingers, but your fingers ain't gonna get blown off when you're playing airsoft. But your eyes,
I mean,
bro, that thing is your
yeah.
eyes getting messed up if you don't wear eye protection with airsoft going on.
I mean, you might get away with it once, but do you want to roll the dice on that?
Bro, no way. Because even if you have
No.
your eyes closed,
I will wholeheartedly encourage, buy the best eye protection you can. I went out and picked my daughter up. She doesn't know she's getting it yet, but when she comes back to play, she's got a new Dye i5.
nice.
She used my i4, because I think on my Instagram I have a picture of her and I at a game,
Okay.
and I'm wearing my revision goggles, the ballistic vision or revision goggles, and a face mask, and she's got she's got my Dye i4, because I remember when I settled in West Virginia for a little bit after getting out of the military, Steel City Airsoft was Amped was supplying Steel City Airsoft, and I used to play up there indoors a lot, so I was kind of thankful I had a paintball mask. So I've always had one
Yep.
laying around for those events where, okay, I'm playing indoors, so I'm going to wear a full face, because even if I'm not required to, overkill's underrated when it comes to safety.
Right. Exactly.
But yeah, that's how I dealt with that. Now the other thing is, I have to say, some of it might come from something a friend of mine, who's a video gamer, is called the asshole syndrome. And the asshole syndrome is, quite simply, in some of these games where there are multiple endings and multiple, like Fallout 4, Dragon Age Origins, where you can have different responses dependent on. A friend of mine noted that her now ex-husband used to pick the asshole dialogue option out of every one of them. The one that was sometimes blunt and direct,
Yeah.
but didn't always need to be said. Yeah, he would always pick that one, and he was not a nice man. I think the funniest thing is his daughter looked at me and says, "You're more of a daddy to me than my own."
Hmm.
So yeah, I guess you could say I have four children, but three by blood.
Right.
But nah,
We have a couple of
uh,
those that
yeah,
kind of hung
kind of
out over
adopted.
here. Yeah.
Yeah, my dad adopted one of my sister's friends. When she got married, her parents couldn't stop fighting long enough to give their blessing.
Hmm.
So she came over to my parents out of distraught. And my dad's just like, I'm wearing a kilt, right?
Yeah.
But but yeah. So that's some of it. I think some of it is immature kids.
Sure.
Some of it is kids who have been taught that being an asshole gets you what you want.
Yeah.
And the other half of it is, as much as I hate to say it, I think there needs to be some kind of immediate response.
Yeah.
Because the minute there isn't, now up here in Pennsylvania, there's actually, I've looked it up. There is a law for discharging a paintball gun. Now, obviously, it's lighter than discharging a firearm.
Sure.
But if somebody's being an asshole and trying to play, those mag dump videos, is emulating one of them, and they've been, they do it bad enough, and the cops get called on them, and that charge gets pressed on them, that's an immediate response. Because now mom and dad have to go get them a lawyer. I mean, as much as I'd love to be, pop them upside the head like, my dad would have, what
Yep.
you thinking?
Mm-hmm.
And my dad didn't have to use closed fist.
Nah.
He knew, he knew, the minute he did that, I knew I'd messed up.
Oh yeah. My dad rarely
I
had to
knew
hit
I'd
me. I
messed
mean,
up.
even as a teenager, he was a big dude. He would still, like a young teenager, all he'd have to do is grab my arm and he would squeeze his thumb underneath, where that nerve point is, where that artery is underneath your bicep. Bro, I mean, he got my attention. That's all it needed, He never,
Yeah,
he'd smack me in the head, same thing. He'd hit me in the back of the head,
what are you thinking?
Uh-huh.
Now, my dad didn't do that for everything. If I messed up at school, my dad would, up, he'd chin wag the whole time, because he was a street kid from Detroit.
Mm.
And it was funny because when I was a kid, I got into a fight with a kid on the playground. He had called my mom a woman of negotiable affection, shall we say?
Okay.
And I turned around. I turned around and I popped this kid in the mouth. And immediately, everybody's, I had started a brawl on the field, and everybody looks at me because I'm almost a carbon copy of my dad. I've seen pictures of me and my dad at about the same age, like my boot camp picture at 22,
Yeah.
versus my dad's basic training picture at 20, because my dad was a draftee. The similarities are so shocking, it's not funny.
Mm-hmm.
It's like carbon copy, and my son is basically the same way.
Yeah.
You take the beard off, take the hair off, I'd look like an older version of him. But everybody's like, but your dad is so calm and collected. How is it? And I looked at him and said, so chasing somebody with a wine bottle down and beating them with a wine bottle for 5 blocks is an option? And they're like, no, your dad couldn't have done that. No, my dad did it, and it was because somebody had said that he had gotten it with his sister. Dad confronted the dude that was running around shooting his mouth off, and just, he's like, I know you didn't do that. I know, who's it? What's it to you? And he says, I'm your brother. Oh shit! Starts taking off running. Beat the guy with a wine bottle for the better part of 5 blocks.
Whew.
Every time he caught up with him. But, as much as that would be, an immediate, you do something like that, you get popped in the mouth, might do it, you can't do it in this day and age.
No.
No,
it used to happen all the time growing up. When we were kids, in the neighborhood, all of our parents, all of our neighbors, all of our friends' parents, like they all knew they had permission to, they'd grab you by the back of your neck, or hit you in the back of the head, or yell at you, or smack your hand, or whatever. Like they all did that back then. But my parents also knew whose house I was going to. Like they knew the parents, right? Everyone knew each other.
The parents all knew one another.
Exactly.
And they all communicated.
Right. Yep.
And the thing was, also, as I got older, I learned that parents weren't infallible. For example, there was a period of time with my childhood friend where, his little sister basically said I hit her, but I hadn't. And when it finally came out, the mom basically brought it to the father's attention, and the father kind of had to come up and say, he came up, he sat down in our living room. He asked if he could come in, went into our living room, apologized abjectly. And I said, I understand you were protecting your daughter.
Sure.
You thought there was a predator, and it turns out there wasn't. And what happened was she got, what had happened was I was doing martial arts at the time. And I had found a secluded place and was practicing a form. And what had happened was when I was practicing the form, she jumped out of the bushes just as I was doing a block this way. And she jumped out so close that I popped her with this part of my hand.
Yeah.
And she's like, I'm like, the first thing that came out of my mouth is, I am so sorry. I did not mean that. You kind of ran into it, because she kind of did.
Yeah.
Because just as I'm going, she's jumping out.
Yeah.
I'm like, oh. But, that's also one of the things you learn too. But I think some of it has to do with, we also don't let kids be kids.
Yeah, absolutely. Yep.
You think about it. My kids don't have phones yet. One of them will probably get one before the summer's out, because she has a boyfriend. She's doing things more out of the house. It makes sense. I didn't have my first cell phone until I was 20 or 21.
Yeah.
And that was because I was doing a lot of work outside the house. I was working outside of the house. And I was going out more with people, and I was ranging a little farther afield. And my parents were like, you're ranging a little farther afield. So if something goes wrong, we want you to have a way of getting a hold of us. And that was a Christmas present. That wasn't. It was a Nokia brick phone.
Yep.
Oh yeah, you know the type.
Yeah, I had one. Yeah.
It was one of the ones that still had the little nubbin antenna.
Yeah.
God, I wound up giving that phone to my sister before I left for Paris Island. Okay. And she inherited my old phone because she was starting to do the same thing. And I was like, if I'm gonna be making my own money. My parents don't need to be paying for this no more. But
that's funny.
That's the other half of it. Is I also don't think we're letting kids be kids. They're trying to handle things like an adult, but they don't have the experiences of kid to learn how to be the adult.
Yeah, they don't have the social experience either. So they go to school. They can't, at school, they're not allowed to, like boys aren't allowed to get in fights anymore, right? Like the cops are called on 2 8-year-olds that are fighting. That's ridiculous. And then you got, we were allowed to fight, and we got in fights in the neighborhood, like all the time. It wasn't bad, but little scuffles here and there. You learn social interaction through that, and you learn about consequences, and you learn respect. So there's a lot of that. And then also they're sitting in front of screens instead of going out and doing a bunch of exercise, like running around. So, and then they sit in a class, they sit at home, they don't get all this, energy out. And when they're, going through puberty, after they're done with that, they've got boys have a ton of testosterone at 15 years old. Like they want to break something. Like they legit, this is like built up in them. Man, I want to break something. I want to get out here. I want to chop wood or hit a baseball with a baseball bat, right? Like, and they're not able to do that, and as much as we did. And so they get on the airsoft field, and they're like, they got all this power in this AEG that they can just
or an
blast
HPA
somebody.
gun.
Yeah, especially at HPA.
Because it seems like the ones that do that, I hate to say it, but it always seems like they're DSG or they're HPA builds.
Yeah.
And do I think it's because HPA is inherently bad? No.
No, it's too much
It's
power for them.
because it's because HPA is way easier to tune than an AEG.
Well, I wonder
I
if, what do
mean,
you think about like if a field would, especially indoor fields, would require, you know how we do, they, you have a joule limit, right? What if they had a RPS, right, like rounds per second, type of thing,
yeah, I
a
remember you
limit?
talking about this. I think with 6 millimeter Colt.
Uh huh.
Cool guy. I'd like to meet him one day.
Yeah, he's a cool dude.
But
He's gonna be on again.
yeah, I think he's pretty cool, and I don't know the speed soft end of it quite so well. I will admit that that is a blind spot of mine. I'm hoping to get that rectified at some point within the next couple of years. Maybe at least dip my toe into it. Um I know Jackal does custom high kappa builds.
Yeah.
So I may see if I can get one done like the Lion Rampant flag.
Oh, nice.
Well, like I said, I'm part Scottish Highlander,
Right.
so and my family were Jacobites who fled to Canada after Bonnie Prince Charlie's rebellion. So I'd go with the gold with a little bit of red in
Uh huh.
it to rep that. But
Well, you played a lot of outdoor stuff. Then, have you seen? Uh, is that an issue as much as as far as the younger guys doing the overshooting and spazzing out and just
around
flipping to auto and like really punishing somebody?
around around here,
Yeah.
not as much. It
Okay.
seems like we've got a real a real good handle on that. Now, like I said, I'll admit that I haven't always played by the rules. One of the first games I played back, I was carrying my M27. I flipped it to safety. I ran to my first bunker. I peeked over to give a shot, went for the shot, and realized, oh crap! And I looked down at the selector switch. I must have nudged it with my gear or nudged it with my glove when I wasn't noticing. Flipped it to auto. I went equipment malfunction. Flipped it back to semi, and no problem.
Yeah.
But somebody asked, who shot that little burst of auto? I'm like, it was me. I must have brushed up against something, but I took my safety, but the minute I realized it, I fixed it. They're like, okay. I mean, I have an ICS I'd love to put out on the field, but I can't because the the selector actually drifts. It's an
Mm.
ICS L85.
Okay.
And some of them shifted, and what it is when it's in semi, if you fire it enough, there's enough of a vibration, it'll actually flip down into auto. So as long as you're aware of that kind of stuff, usually it's not too bad.
Yeah.
But this stuff of, oh, he's not calling his hits, so I'm going to flip to auto and run up and just unload into him. No, that's crossed the line. And
Well, that's another
nobody
good
does
point
that.
too. Is
Not
the
not here.
selector? Like
Early-
what? What about these fields, especially the indoor ones? If they required the only gun you're allowed to play with, if you're under a certain age, right? If you're under 20, I don't know, that it can only have semi, like it can't even be able to have auto. And matter of fact, Lancer Tactical just did a I've been following there's Instagram and Facebook and all their stuff for a while, and I know at SHOT Show, one of the guys I was talking to, shout out to Bondo, he was talking about Lancer Tactical coming out with some really badass stuff, and one of the things they just talked about on their Instagram was they did a short video on this where it's and I'm not sure what the model is, but it's an HPA'd out of the box, okay, type of gun. It doesn't have to be converted.
So like the old Titmans.
Like the old Titmans, and it comes. You buy the tank that screws on the back, okay. So like these indoor Speedsoft types, whatever. And this is going to be geared, it's marketed towards field owners to buy as their rentals. That way they don't have to have all these batteries charged and blah, blah, blah. You have the tanks. Obviously, you have to buy a tank. I think it's a 12 or 16 ounce tank. It's small. You fill them up, okay? They put them in. But this thing is, it doesn't even have the ability to go full auto. Like, it's safe or fire, and it's only semi. I think it's a really good option, man. I think maybe that's what would fix a lot of a lot of these issues. Who knows?
It would. It would. And for a rental fleet, that makes perfect sense.
Yeah.
I've always been a little leery of HPA because of the remote hose. Back in my paintball days, I bought 3 of those things, and none of them ever worked.
What was
they
it? They
leaked.
Oh, okay.
The remote hoses.
Yeah.
Yeah, they leaked, and I was just like, I'm not wasting my money on this crap.
Well, they're definitely a lot better now.
That's another thing I think that another thing I think that sometimes may also be a maturity thing is everything I bought for all of my stuff, whether it was hunting or airsoft or paintball, I paid for.
Oh yeah, you had to
so
work
I
for
put
it.
a lot. Yeah, I worked for it. I worked for it. So it was let me do my research rather than let me buy the prettiest gubbin on the thing.
Well, yeah, stick with what you could afford. And you had learned how much work it takes to get X amount of money, when you're 16, 17 years old. So, yeah, that's another, there's a lot of factors going into that for sure. But, I'm,
right now I'm still finishing up getting the Stoats equipment.
Hmm.
And I picked her up a gun, but it was one of the Specna Arms Gen 1 edges. I have a leery thing about the polymer bodies.
Yeah.
Probably just an old man's, leeriness. Well, no, because my second AEG ever was a Tokyo Marui XM177.
Okay.
Plastic body, creaked to no end. You could feel the flex in the body. And I'm like, anytime I hear polymer body, I'm like, I think back to that. And I'm like, And I also think back to some of the early Classic Army sport lines. Where the gearbox was nice, but one kid took a spill with one, and it busted the body. And it was, I wound up giving lending the kid my KWA-M4, the KM4A1, and just tell him, look, if you strip a piston, that's fine. But if I catch you beating trees with it like a baseball bat, we're going to have a problem.
Mm-hmm.
Kind of a thing. Because I'm like, yeah, you bust this when you fall down. My first priority is, are you okay?
Yeah.
Because I can buy a new gun.
Sure.
Might take me a little while, but I can buy a new one. We can't buy a new you. And that's the other thing is also I think some of the older, like we see like we said, some of the older players, there's a quote that comes out at me from from one of Dick Marcinko's books about the real red cell.
Yep.
If you ever read Marcinko.
I read all his books, bro.
Yeah, you remember the one where he actually went into the actual people?
Yep.
And he had his commandments for spec war?
Yes.
And he's talking about have character. Don't be a character.
Mm-hmm.
That's what we need. We need people with character. Now, does character mean you're going to be Mr. Rogers? Oh, hell no. We're human beings. And if we accept that human beings have flaws, long as you can follow the ethics reasonably and you ain't a Stalin wannabe or a follower of the Mustache Man, I got no problem with you.
Right.
And I'm going to put it both ways. You know, a Stalin wannabe or a follower of the Mustache Man.
That's funny.
They're both not okay people.
Now you've been playing airsoft a long time, man.
Yeah, I have.
I mean, that's good. I think. Do you know Don Nepa Airsoft? He's up in PA.
I know of him by reputation. Him and I have not had the opportunity to cross paths. Him and I have had some conversations.
I think he's been playing. He started playing probably just a few years longer than you. A few years before you.
He. The Northeast,
early '90s, I think.
Yeah. You have to remember, I was growing up outside of Philadelphia, so getting up into the Northeast was a little bit of a hike. And whenever, like I said, the fields I knew of and the people I knew were more around Mill Hall, which is a little more toward Penn State. Mm-hmm. So that's why my life took me out there. Now, MSATO is also having a MilSim in my backyard in Ashland.
Oh, okay.
That's in my county. I'm north of Reading.
Gotcha.
Pennsylvania.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, Nepa's, he's been Don, he's been playing airsoft for a long time as well. And he's seen all the transitions.
I gotta contact him and and I think him and I have had some very interesting conversations about things like I've had some very interesting conversations, not just with some of the people like Don, but also some very people like Leah Del Castillo. I've had some interesting conversations with her because she'll bring up some interesting stuff, and I'll bring up something that very few people remember, and they did that. She had one. What is an old airsoft gun you want to see remade again? My answer was the Tokyo Marui HK51. I don't care if Marui doesn't make it, but I want that style back. You remember that one?
No.
Look it up on Arnie's Airsoft. It's a really interesting one. It was based on, much like the MC51, it was based on a Volmer conversion of a full auto capable HK91.
Yeah.
But it's basically an MC51 with a longer barrel and a full stock. And given the fact that we were running NICADs or some of us were running NIMS, that was high tech in those days. But I like that style, it's just...
Yeah, I see it. Maybe it looks like it looks like an MP5. Yeah.
Yeah, it looks like an MP5 that takes 7.62 mags.
Oh, it fires 7.62.
Yeah.
Okay.
Like I said, the guy, there was a gunsmith named Volmer, Vollmer, who took a G3 or a HK91.
Yeah.
And he did that modification to it.
I'll put it on the screen real
quick. But it's
so
one of those really cool ones.
Okay. Yeah, that's cool. Yeah, it looks a lot like an MP5. That's wild that short of a gun shoots a 7.62.
Yeah. Well, it's kind of funny because years ago, when I was overseas, they actually found something like it in Iraq. It was an Iranian G3 that somebody had basically cut the barrel and the gas tube off and silver soldered a AK gas block onto it.
Oh, wow.
And they found it with mismatched 7.62 ammunition, like some they had stolen from, one source, or was old Iranian or something of that nature.
Uh-huh.
But yeah, they found one like that was actually gunsmith almost like that.
That's crazy.
Overseas. So weird stuff finds its way everywhere.
Now, what do you got going on for the rest of the year? Like, do you have do you plan out certain events you would like to go to each year, or certain event hosts that you follow?
Um, this year, my biggest goal is to get out in May. Well, a lot of it is going to depend on what goes on. Um, I'm married. My wife is dual citizenship American Mexican. She was born in San Diego, and she grew up in Tijuana.
Okay.
Her dad was a doctor down there. Her mom was a lab tech and phlebotomist. So, start about 2 years back, her father passed, and every year around Mother's Day, we try and take the time, and if we can't make it down there to check in on her physically, we try and uh, uh, I try and uh, if we can't go down there physically to check on her, I try and at least make sure she knows, send something down there so that way it gets there around their Mother's Day, which
Mm-hmm.
I think is always May 11th. So I'm going to cut it close, but one of my goals is to try and make the Otherworld event at EMR,
Oh,
because
okay.
that one, yeah, because I haven't been to EMR in a while, and I kind of feel like seeing it again.
Right. Well, I think Mother's Day is
Um,
the second. It's always on a Sunday. It's the second Sunday. So let me see what it is this year. Which day
she
it
lives in
is?
Mexico.
Yeah,
Mexico,
May
I think it's
12th.
always May
Mm-hmm.
11th, 11th or 12th, somewhere
Yeah.
in there.
Yeah, it's always
But
the second Sunday. Yeah, I got
but
you.
yeah,
And then Cinco de
if
Mayo is
if
the week before that.
see, I've been down to Mexico for Cinco de Mayo. It's not as
They
big down
don't
there as it is here.
they don't
No,
celebrate it like they do here. It's
no,
I've met
it's very understated.
I've worked with a handful of Mexican dudes that I'm still friends with that when I was flipping houses, and I'd always ask them, Cinco de Mayo, you going, what are you doing tonight? And they're like, bro, that's not even a thing we do, okay? Like that's all American stuff. I was like, oh, okay.
Yeah, yeah, like I said, I was in 2 years ago. I was down there for Cinco de Mayo, because that's about the time that her dad started going downhill.
Mm,
We got the word. I said it was a Monday. It was a Monday morning. I said, you go to work now, and when you got a chance, start looking for flights Wednesday. Now, sadly, he passed before we could get there,
mm.
but I was still down there. I still met her mother. Her mother loves me, and I don't know. I'm going to insist I don't know why. Sometimes she has said I am a little loco. Well, her mom and dad wound up getting a place in Rosarito, which is kind of like
I've been to
uh, oh,
Rosarita.
yeah, Rosarito, yeah.
Yeah, I spent
Basically,
a weekend in Rosarito. We went. There's La Bufadora. We
mhm,
heard about this place called La Bufadora. We went down there, and when I was stationed in Pendleton, we went down there and hung out at this place.
yeah,
Little motel room in Rosarito. Went down to La Bufadora. You know, I mean, there's really nothing there. It's not really good. Back then, this was '91, so it wasn't a whole lot of. It wasn't like a tourist thing. But it was cool. It was a cool place to stay and see and that kind of thing. So
oh yeah, it's definitely a change of pace. But yeah, well, that's the thing. They were living there, and then her dad had his practice in Tijuana,
hmm
and it was kind of funny because um, we were already when her dad went downhill, we were already planning to go down and meet her parents. I was going to go down and as we call it, face the music kind of a deal. But her parents loved me, so
nice.
actually, I found out they were trying to learn English so they could communicate with me. I'm trying to meet them halfway and learn Spanish,
Yep.
but which is kind of hard. But no, right now, my two big things that I'm trying to do is I'm trying to make more connections with the airsofters in Mexico, particularly in that area. around Tijuana,
Yeah.
because I'd love to go down there and catch a game. But as I was going to say, one of the old taquerias that my wife went to was called Tacos Frank. It was it's in Tijuana. I was down there a couple of years ago, and I'm pretty sure it's still around. Those kind of things don't go away easily. Real good place if you want carne asada or al pastor. But that's one of my goals. I'm going to try and make the other world productions in May. It's kind of like I look at it and I go, I get more enjoyment out of Airsoft teaching the next generation. And you and I are military guys. We understand the concept of crawl, walk, run.
Yep.
So crawling and walking is where do you do the crawling and walking before you go to the running for the big games?
Mm-hmm.
I know last year I hit up one at OX Outdoor Extreme Chesapeake City, but that was more of a bigger game. I've been watching some of the. I'm right now still kind of feeling out some of the promoters and where they're going, the big ones.
Yeah.
And so I'm kind of watching that one, teaching the next generation, and just having fun where I can. That's kind of where I look at it.
Nice. Now, what about your kids? You said your daughter is she going to play for the first time this year?
She played for the first time last year. She played an open play, and then for November she played the large game at Chesapeake City. And I think if you go on my Instagram, there's a picture somewhere down there of it. Like I said, with me, I tend to view the start of my season, because I know you've talked to Paul. Paul's a wonderful guy. Love the man. Like my own family. But he lives down in Lancaster.
Okay.
I'm kind of up in the mountains. Like you go a little farther north and east.
Yeah.
You're right where the Molly Maguires happened. If you remember that.
Uh-huh.
So, for example, this week we had snow. It didn't stick, but we still had snow.
That's crazy, bro. Yeah.
So, yeah, this morning it was. I took my dad to go run some errands because he's retired and he's got some diabetic neuropathy in his feet. I took him out, and it was 36 Fahrenheit. So I still have a warning on it about. So that's why it seems like I get started a little later, because I'm up in the mountains.
Sure.
So sometimes where people who are a little farther down or a little farther south from me, they, okay, oh, it's clear. And I go, it ain't clear up here.
Right. Well, that leads me into another question then. What you brought up
April's
earlier,
usually when I start.
one of the events you talked about was Santa against
Santa versus Grinch.
Grinch, yeah. How is that played? Like what's up with that thing?
Well, we did a standard NCAO green versus tan.
Gotcha.
One side was Santa, one side was the Grinch.
Oh, okay.
It was a drive actually for Toys for Tots.
Oh, okay.
Which, you know what, I can back that. That's one. You hear about some charities are a little shifty. Nah, this one you can back 150%.
Oh, sure. Yep.
So anything for Toys for Tots, I usually, I was big into usually backing.
Mm-hmm.
And it was one of them things. Ferg at the time was running it as, like I said, a drive. So you could, so they had Marines there with their getting donations, but then if you donated a toy that was over, if you donated a toy, your admission was free.
Gotcha.
So that was how that ran.
Hmm.
But no, I
Well,
that
I
was
thought
one.
what I was picturing was a bunch of suited up Santas, Santa suits and Grinch suits running around.
Oh, I mean, we had some of those, and you know what? For a game like that, that is completely fine. I was like, I went 1 year for Fulda, and I always had a Lion Rampant flag in the barracks. They took it once. They took it from me once. And that was when we had rumors that the British Royal Marines were going to do an exchange program with us. Everybody looked at that one and went, find Farquharson and hide it. No, we got to take them. Because we do not need you starting a fight.
Oh, that's funny.
Yep, but I have one Lion Rampant flag in my house that was in the barracks with me, and I took it to Iraq with me, and I always kept it in my back and my day pack because I said if things get shitty, I'll go out like my forebears under the same flag.
Nice.
And uh, and then for Fulda 1 year, I decided, because somebody's like, I want you to conjure up your inner mercenary. I'm like, okay. So I wound up safety pinning it, or I can't remember. Did I safety pin it or how I fastened it? But I fastened it to my plate carrier, so it draped over my back like a freaking cape.
Oh, wow.
So I have this giant golden red flag as I'm doing my best to haul hell for leather down the field, and it's just trailing behind me, and everybody's yelling Braveheart quotes.
Oh, God. That's funny.
And I looked at him and said, I looked at him when we started taking fire. I looked at him and said, the Almighty says he can get me out of this, but he's pretty sure. And I don't have to finish the quote. Because you know the one.
I love that one, yes.
Yep, because I'm Scottish and Scots-Irish on my dad's side. So.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, that character in that movie, yeah, is great.
Oh, Stephen the Irishman was hilarious.
Uh-huh. That's awesome, man. Well, listen, brother,
But,
it's been great talking with you.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, it has. I'm enjoying it. But yeah.
So you got some good stuff coming up this year. You got your one of your kids playing with you.
Yep.
Starting out already. That's good. Teaching them good etiquette and manners and.
Well, yeah. That. Like I said, I think that's the biggest one with the next generation is teaching them the right way, because I guarantee you, YouTube is not teaching them the right way.
No, unfortunately.
If your kids, and I'm going to tell that to any parent that gets involved with it, even if you are themselves, find them somebody they gravitate to.
Yeah, yeah.
Because
unfortunately, online they're getting
always dad.
Yeah, they're getting rewarded for bad behavior. With social media stuff. When they post these videos, they're getting.
Well, it's what gets them ad revenue.
Yep. Yeah, I know, right? Well, thank you so much, man. I appreciate you. Where can do you have any social media that people can follow your airsoft journey on?
Yeah, I have a Facebook on Keystone Carcashu. I have a YouTube channel. I have a Rumble channel. You search for the same thing.
Yep.
The videos are somewhat limited right now because, well, I'm still getting camera stuff and everything else kind of put together.
Sure.
So it's kind of raw, but you're hearing how people do things and kind of how people are supposed to behave, kind of deal.
Gotcha.
So that's valuable. My Instagram is the big one, which I usually try and do. Um, I usually try and post reels there, mostly helps for help and encouragement for the next generation, so to speak.
Good. Awesome, man. Well, I
But
appreciate
yeah,
you being on.
that's you search that Keystone Carcajou, Carcajou, you'll find it.
Yeah, I'll have all these links on the
Hmm.
description on across all
Hmm.
the platforms that I post on. So,
Yeah, and I think I
um,
also have an X, but I mostly lurk there.
yeah.
If you want to find me though, shoot me a message. I'll if you shoot me a message across, I'll find it on one.
Yeah, speaking of X, what formerly
Hmm.
Twitter, okay?
Yep.
Uh, everyone, I'm really trying to build up my Twitter following, okay? As much as my Instagram. Uh, because I don't want to be like, a lot of these. I post just about everything I post on Instagram, I post on my Twitter, okay? So, but I think I've got 24 followers on Twitter. So, anyone watching or listening, go find my Twitter. There's links all over all these videos for it, and follow me on there. Let's see if we can get at least 100 followers on Twitter, man. My Twitter looks pathetic right now. It's like I got all these posts in 24. So go over there and hit me up on there, and I'll have all your links on there too on this video and description. So everyone watching and listening, go follow this guy, and all his links will be listed. But I appreciate you, man. It's been great meeting you, and I look forward to talking to you again in the future.
Oh yeah, I look forward to it.